Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm Heather Riggs. I'm going to repeat myself now. Director of Administration here at NEMA, she, her. Welcome to our, let me get this right, Industrial History Museum PAG. And I'm going to actually turn it over to our PAG chair, Eric Peterson, to get us going.
Thank you so much, Heather. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a working person's lunch discussion. This is hosted, of course, by the Industrial Museum Affinity Group under the kind auspices of NEMA. I am the PAG chair. This is the first of several planned Industrial Museum PAG activities to come. Please stay tuned for more new things. If you would like to suggest a topic, a site visit, or any other type of activity, please let me know. We'd love to have you included in this because I think it's going to be a very vibrant discussion and more discussions to come. Today, we have a wonderful panel of experts from around the region. And now, without further ado, is today's moderator, Stephen Guerriero,
Guerriero.
Guerriero,
Yep.
who is the lead educator at the Charles River Museum of Industry and Innovation in Waltham. Take it away, Stephen.
All right. Thanks so much, Eric. And before I start, I want to give a plug to Industrial History New England, and that's industrialhistorynewengland.org, which is kind of a parallel organization that is promoting kind of industrial interpreted sites all around New England. So it's a great resource. And actually, in looking at that website, was one of the kind of primary drivers of me bringing this group together, which is the sheer volume and breadth of sites across New England. We're talking millyards and mills, factories, foundries, chemical plants, all kinds of places, maritime museums. So to bring us all together in a way that we can have these conversations that are particular to our kinds of interpreted sites and museums is really important. And one thing that I'd like to see is gaining more momentum to bring us together more often and kind of think about where we have issues in common that we can discuss, challenges that we can address, and think creatively about how we can activate this wide network that we have. So I'm really excited to bring us together. I'm hoping that Mike will be able to join us once he sorts out his Zoom gremlins. So my name is Steve Guerriero. I'm the Director of Education at the Charles River Museum of Industry and Innovation in Waltham. We're at the site of Francis Cabot Lowell's first textile mill, so where the Industrial Revolution started at scale. And yesterday was Francis Cabot Lowell's 250th birthday. So we had a little party for him last night. And it's an exciting year for us. Obviously, we're all living in the zeitgeist of 250 everything. So it was nice to tie that in as well. I'll talk a little bit about myself, and then I'll ask my fellow panelists to introduce themselves and their sites. So like I said, I am a longtime educator. I was a sixth grade social studies teacher in Needham, Massachusetts for like over 20 years, and then joined the museum as director of education. Part of my purview is building school programming, tours, training our tour guides, building school curricula, and participating in things like exhibitions, planning, collections, all of that kind of thing. As those of us in the education space know, we kind of have a hand in all the things happening in the museum because eventually we are going to have to tell visitors about it. Our site is a small museum here in Waltham. We've been around for about 40 years. We have had kind of a starting point with our National Historic Site of the Francis Cabot Lowell Mill. But our collection includes 19th and 20th century innovative technology, including a working belt and line shaft machine shop. We have things that relate to companies like the Waltham Watch Company, most importantly, aside from the Boston Manufacturing Company, and other local institutions like Polaroid, steam engines of all kinds, and other Waltham and Greater Boston made machinery. I would love to throw to Kristy Ellsworth up in Manchester. If you just tell us who you are, how you came to your role, and tell us a little bit about your museum.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. My name is Kristy Ellsworth. I'm the Director of Education at the Millyard Museum in Manchester, New Hampshire. We celebrate 11,000 years of history in our space. We are in one of the mill buildings, mill number 3 of the Amoskeag Manufacturing Company, which operated from 1831 to 1936, and at one point was the largest producer of textiles by one single company in the world. So we really focus on our very early story, which are the Abenaki people that were native to our area, their interaction with the water and the Amoskeag Falls, and then how that sort of interpreted to the Industrial Revolution in Manchester, as well as the rise and fall of the Amoskeag Manufacturing Company. We are in a fully functioning mill yard. I think the only thing we don't do in it now is manufacture, but we are currently enjoying 0% unoccupied mill space. So we have sort of, as a museum that's been here for 25 years, we have sort of seen the rebirth of the mills in its infancy, and now we are enjoying the fruits of that labor and might someday price ourselves out of the space that we occupy, but that's not for today. So my role, I get to educate school children and the public on the benefits and pros and cons of the Industrial Revolution.
Great, thank you. And then Eleanor, if I can throw to you. Just don't forget to unmute.
Yep, I got you. Hi, everybody. So my name is Eleanor Katari, and I am the manager of education at the Metropolitan Waterworks Museum. And just like Steve was saying, I'm the field trip lady. We do education programs for everyone from preschool to grad school. We have good relationships with the local schools, public and private, and several of the higher education institutions. And I've got a finger in every pie. I help with exhibits, I help with programs, and like we're a small team and we get it all done. I really love working at the Waterworks Museum. I feel like there's this wealth of history there, and I love the undertold stories of industrial history. Like you just pull on one thread, and all of a sudden you're talking about water access, you're talking about climate change, you're talking about innovation, you're talking about engineering. There are so many different ways to connect and help that grow. So yeah, I've been there about a year and a half. And it is field trip season hardcore. Like we are full on with April, May, and June, and those groups coming to visit us at the museum. Okay. Any other questions, or is that good for now?
I think that's good for now. I'll start us off and also just say that unable to join us is Sarah Tim at the Maine Maritime Museum that I want to make sure. Oh, and Mike Fenzel just arrived. And so, Sarah, I just wanted to shout out, our Maritime Museum friends that she was going to represent, but couldn't make it at the last minute, but hopefully in a future one. And Mike has just joined us. So Mike Fenzel, yay, who is at the American Precision Museum. Mike, you're perfect timing. We're just introducing kind of ourselves, our role, and our museum in a kind of in a nutshell, and then we'll get into some questions, if that's okay, if you want to introduce yourself in the American Precision Museum.
Sure, great. Yes, my name is Mike Fenzel. I have not been here too long, just since this winter, and it's snowing here today, so perhaps it is still winter. While this is my first foray into industrial museums, I have spent the previous 25 years working in science museums. And over the last decade especially, I've been fully involved in, developing family engineering programs and designing in and for maker spaces. And in a large part, that's what got me here today. American Precision Museum is in the very, very beginnings of a major renovation, part of which is opening an education center and makerspace. We are also full speed now into bringing our programming, into line with this project. I hope some of these experiences still flow well into this discussion, but I'm also thrilled to be here just to learn and connect with everyone else.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mike. And we're glad you could join us. So just so folks know, for about 30 minutes, I'm going to moderate a discussion between our panelists, and then I'll open it up to questions to everybody. So you can feel free to throw some questions in the chat as well, or otherwise at the end, we'll have time for that. Kristy, do you mind if I start with you? Because you spoke on something which is, for a lot of us, we never have enough space, which is one of the challenges. I wonder, and for our other panelists, what's kind of the biggest challenge you face, and what are you most excited about kind of in the next, let's say, 1 to 2 year time frame in terms of your museum and what you're looking forward to?
Sure. The biggest challenge, we actually have two big challenges we face. We are fortunate enough to have a classroom, but it also serves as a meeting space, a conference hall, and a rental space. So the desire to see every Manchester, New Hampshire public school is constantly battling with the need for that room to be something else. Every third Wednesday, it is home to the Kiwanis breakfast. So I come in at 5:30, switch it over for the Kiwanis breakfast. They have their breakfast. I turn it into my classroom. And then when my classroom leaves, I turn it into our board meeting. Before my board meeting gets out at 6:30 at night, I flip it back over.
Oh my goodness.
So space is a big issue for us. Luckily, I'm still fairly mobile. So that's good. But being a staff of 4, that is largely a burden that I take on alone. And the second biggest challenge we have is with Manchester public schools in general. They have cut history from their curriculum before 6th grade, at least as a formulated curriculum. So they buy all-inclusive curriculums that include math and STEM and English. And then the history is just touched upon with the reading materials that they use. So there's not often a huge desire for them to book history field trips. They want to focus on that STEM. So we have been really leaning on the STEM part of the industrial history and gearing our programs more towards the science and math part of our museum, which is wonderful and exciting, but not what was previously done. So it's building these programs up from the ground. We also are the neighbor to a very nice children's science museum that does enjoy a lot of school visits. So we're kind of in competition with them directly. So I would say time and lack of interest in the history aspect of our museum.
And just to round off, anything you're looking forward to in the next year or two?
We have some really exciting partnerships coming up with Eversource, which is our energy provider in the New Hampshire area. And we're hoping to really tap into factories and manufacturing and water power and just get some more community support for switching from a real academic history program to a more science-based history program. And just looking forward to people really, digging their feet in and helping us do that.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. So much of that resonates. Absolutely. Especially the shared kind of space thing that all our spaces need to be all things. Eleanor, do you mind if I go to you and ask kind of what are some of the challenges you face, and also what are you most looking forward to in the next year or two?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that space is one of the pieces. I think it's funny because from the outside, our building is so big. Like you can see it across the Chestnut Hill Reservoir. It's this gorgeous, brick and stone archways and this Richardsonian Romanesque. It looks like a mansion. And inside, most of that space is taken up with our giant vintage steam engines. And so we really which they're so cool and they're awesome. But that means that as inside, we really only have 2 oral spaces. We have our giant echoey steam engine, and then we also do have a classroom space that does also function as a meeting room and the conference room and all those other things as well. And so one of the ways that we are trying to stretch ourselves is like we can handle 2 groups at a time, like 2 classes or 1 class divided into 2 groups. But in order to have 3 separate groups at the same time, we have to figure out how to use our space differently. And when it's nice out, we can spill out into the outside and you can use our outside spaces. But I don't know if you've noticed, but the weather in Massachusetts is really, really volatile. And so that is one of the things that we sort of just get to scramble with all the time, in terms of being like, okay, are we doing the rainy day version or the sunny day version of our program once we're getting into the springtime? I think another thing that I think of as a challenge for our school groups, that I carry over from, I used to work in California as a museum educator, and there also is that transportation piece. I mean,
Yes.
we can offer programs, we can offer subsidized Title I programming, but if they can't get a bus, they can't get here. And we are lucky in that we are walking distance from 2 Green Line trains. So you can come on the Green Line, you can get here on public transportation. But committing to take, 28 third graders on public transit is a big ask. And so that I think of as sort of another area of growth in terms of figuring out how to help schools coordinate that, that transportation piece. And in terms of things I'm looking forward to, I mean, I really love working with the students. We're coming up, we've got some big events coming up this year. That's just part of our sort of like yearly circle of events. But we have our Waterfest program that's coming up in June. And we're already sort of working with partnerships for that. And we've got groups who are going to come and do tabling and activities. We make it really family friendly. We hope for good weather because we are outside. And so that's, I think, the next thing that I'm looking forward to coming up soon is our Waterfest.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I definitely relate to the buses are shockingly expensive and shockingly kind of a barrier for a lot of visits and something we have to kind of help schools navigate. And the weather piece too, like having limited indoor space means, we have a walking tour that we call Bale to Bolt and walk through the whole mill complex here. And so we consider that a outdoor learning space. And for really big groups, like we kind of count on that. Like we wouldn't all fit in one place. And so we have to kind of, even if it's sprinkling a little bit, still bring them out to the dam and things like that. Mike, Mike, I'm curious.
The wind coming. Okay, go ahead. I'll let you go.
No, that's good. We also have like when we get out to the dam, it can be really cold if it's cool, but we work with it. And Mike, at the Precision Museum, I'm wondering kind of I know you're relatively new, but you probably have a sense already of kind of some challenges that you guys face and then something that you're looking forward to in the next year or two.
Yeah, couple things. Part of why I had trouble getting on right now. We have boring going on our driveway to do some air sampling and dig down, and it keeps giving me my internet is unstable message. Besides the shaking of the building that's going on right now, so I apologize if I drop off or if there's just a lot of noise behind me because they're right outside my window right now. I think a lot of those, the challenges that have already been said, are felt here. For the first couple weeks. After I got here, I kept saying, like, when am I going to meet everybody? Because this can't be it. Where are we keeping the other staff? And so that is definitely all the things of spaces. But we're kind of in that moment of, a little bit of like, hope for the build it and they will come type of aspect. We're about to undertake, in the fall, the beginning of construction for our renovation, and to create that space, to create a whole area where we can welcome schools and classrooms, because now it is a juggling of temporary exhibits or other things that are happening, doing it right next to the welcome video and hoping no one walks in right when you're just about to start the program. And so all those challenges, but it is in going forward, it's just the types of programs we're going to be able to do, but also mentioning those partnerships of realizing those places already within the community that are doing amazing things. We are pretty rural, so that whole thing of, well, how many students are there anyway within even a hour drive of us? And if they all came, what would, yeah, we could probably handle them at the school. So how do we get that, how do we get those messages out there that we are, and, largely that has been, starting small. And those, the programs that I've started to implement since getting here are those, the family vacation and out of school time programs, letting, have to build that idea that, yeah, this is a place where families can come and do new things. And each visit is going to be something different. And it isn't just the same machines that you're going to be looking at each time. So yeah, I mean, those constraints of time and resources are real. But I think my background is helping a little bit into make those connections to engage students and families into making it relevant and exciting to their lives and experience.
Yeah, and anything you're looking forward to in the next kind of year or two going on at the museum?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got to build a whole makerspace, so
sure, no pressure.
So yeah, none at all. The shopping is really fun right now.
That actually is a good point, and I'm going to come back, Kristy, to you because you also mentioned this. I don't know how many of us, but it seems like more have a maker space or some kind of student innovation space or something that is kind of hosted in-house as a way that isn't just about visiting exhibits, but has kind of an aspect. And also you mentioned kind of the STEM piece of it, which is, I know many, but not all of us are kind of either humanities or history-minded folks, but that STEM piece is important. It seems to be even more important now, and that how do you kind of see, and maybe you can just tell us like a little bit about what your space looks like. You and I were talking a little bit about, you have a pretty awesome Lego display, so all of us kind of know and love Legos, but your thoughts on kind of that in-house student kind of space and related to STEM.
Yeah, our programming, like our field trip programming, is very, very hands-on. Our museum is much less so. And before COVID, there was very little for children to do in the museum if they weren't being guided through an activity. It made the space not very family friendly, even though children under 12 are free in our space. So it's definitely affordable for families, but there wasn't anything that would really interest probably anybody under 12. And so I took COVID as the strange time to install hands-on activities in our space. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive, but we really needed to get people who were stuck on their screens back in our spaces since they were so wide open. So we now have 10 stations throughout the museum. They're not necessarily maker spaces, but they're short activities that can be done even without the help of a parent. They're very, Millie the Mill Girl guides them through a little guidebook. And we talk about water power and gears. There are Kinects and Legos out. There are train sets out. And there are things for that much younger audience to connect while hopefully their parents are viewing and enjoying the museum. And to take that even a step further to make it more inclusive to children and hands-on, we've recorded a separate audio tour that can be accessed through your phone that is recorded from the perspective of a child by children, hoping to really get them to connect with the space and to connect with the STEM component of it. And then hopefully they'll learn a little history in the process.
Yeah, that definitely, it makes a lot of sense. And Eleanor, to you, I don't remember if the Waterworks has kind of an in-house space, but also this idea, just more broadly about, we want people to find us and we want people to come to our museums, but also we as educators, I'm sure, do a lot of outreach, a lot of cold emailing teachers and curriculum heads and things like that. So I wonder if you might speak to either one of those kinds of things.
Yeah, I can go ahead and speak to the idea of hands-on activities first
Mm.
because we do have hands-on activities in the museum. And I don't know about you guys. I have kids. I've been a teacher, and I am so cheap. I'm so cheap. Like if I can do it with cardboard, if I can do it with wooden blocks, if I can have something that's reusable. And so we have stations both downstairs, and then we have our upstairs space also. Our upstairs space, which is our classroom space, is also a rotating exhibit space. And so what's nice about that is that it gives us a reason to switch out some of the activities so that they connect to whatever the exhibit is on the walls. So right now upstairs we have an exhibit on sort of ancient water technologies and modern water challenges in different places around the world in 6 different countries. And so that means I get to put out our build an archway out of wooden blocks, and I get to put out our how to play with an Archimedes screw kind of idea so that you can have these connections between the activities that are there and the content that is on the walls. And again, I really liked what you said, Kristy, about like being able to have the kids do something, which allows parents a little bit more time to spend in the space and be able to read the signage and to sort of interact with that a little bit more. So it's a way of creating a museum experience that really does serve all of those populations. We have a recent innovation that is so low key and has been super popular, which is that we have a scavenger hunt. We've got just like a nice little photo scavenger hunt, and you circle all of the things that you can find. And if you get all of the things on the scavenger hunt, which, we're pretty lenient about, you get to come to the front desk and get a sticker. I think the most surprising thing to me about our scavenger hunt is how much our college students are really, really into the scavenger hunt. So we
And
have groups of,
adults.
I know
Yes.
adults, they're so
Yes.
into it. Yeah. So like
And it's so
yeah,
cheap.
it's so cheap and they love it. So absolutely. So that part. And then did you want me to pivot to the next sort of part of your question too? Or is
Yeah,
there
and then I'll throw because Mike, you spoke a little about you're building an innovation space, so we kind of know from you that you're working on that. And yeah, so Eleanor, if you want to talk about like how, outreach, like how you get classrooms, and
oh
then Mike, I'll put you on deck for that question as well.
yeah, I feel like actually, the answer to that right now is you guys, we have really good street cred. Actually, have like really pretty robust relationships with Brookline Public Schools, Newton Public Schools, Boston Public Schools, several of the private schools. So I do have a constant contact, sort of like where we gather everyone's information and we sort of keep them updated and be like, hey, it's field trip season. Hey, it's field trip season. Um, but I actually think the other way that people find us when people find us not for our education programs, but just from walk-ins, is actually Google Maps. Like
Mm,
it's like people just look, something to do in Boston, places to do it, like family-friendly things in Boston, museums nearby. And we have really excellent Google reviews that are all just from visitors and lots of photographs. And
mm,
so that actually is a little bit of a conversation for us, which is like how we don't have to put a lot of money into putting ourselves out there because we already have those connections with school groups. And honestly, how do you find out anything in the world? You look for it on Google Maps. And so
mm.
our Google reviews are a good asset for us.
Mm,
Mhm.
excellent. Yeah, that's it. Actually, I haven't necessarily thought specifically about Google reviews, but that makes a lot of sense. We have people who come in and like, oh, we just walked by or biked by and figured, what's going on in there? And we also have people who are, I grew up in Waltham my whole life, and did you guys just
Yes.
open? And it's like, no, we opened in 1986. Mike, I wonder if you want to speak a little bit about kind of outreach and for your museum, it's a little bit more of kind of a journey to get to it, I think.
Yeah, and I think, I sort of, I may personify some of those struggles that we face anyway. Like when I moved to Vermont 24 years ago, I lived less than a quarter of a mile from where I'm sitting right now. I didn't step into this building until less than 2 years ago. And so, and I think that is sort of common around here. Like even if you've heard, oh, we've heard of the American Precision Museum, but it's I've never gone down there yet, type of thing. Um, I'll have to say honestly too, having spent the last 25 years in this area almost, and not having grown up here, my local history was all central New York. So it's like, I could sing songs about the Erie Canal. But even I was like, oh, I have no idea about the history that we're representing here very well and until really, being here. And so I think, that is that challenge too. I'm going a little bit to about what Kristy was started talking about too. I think on, with kids is, one of those elements is, not that works so well in especially making and creating for a purpose is sort of finding those places of empathy for kids, but then also storytelling. And so when we do have those low barriers to getting them involved in something. So it is materials like Legos that they're familiar with. So they don't need an introduction to be like, oh, come and try to figure out what you can do here first and then start doing something. It's like, okay, what are those materials? What are those prompts that are just going to get kids or visitors involved, and eliminate all those barriers that we can, to getting them involved. For the most part, in the last couple of years, this has been, we've had like an education department of one person here. Now we're an education department of two people here. But the one person, like her role was largely, our main output in our department were kits that were then, sent out to schools. And so that was, and it originated sort of within, again, in the pandemic time, and kept going from there. And so, a lot of our focus on outreach now is, okay, yeah, we've sent you some wonderful free materials, but like, how else are we now going to be able to engage, and especially engage with schools here? There'll be, I don't know if anyone has experiences, once you start tearing things apart on a 180-year-old building, I'm guessing it's never really good news. So it's like, if we start construction, who knows
Yes.
what's going to happen. But I think, obviously, getting out to schools is probably going to be, more and more important for us in the next year and 18 months. And so, making sure, how can we adapt our programming for that? And finding then those relevant pieces that do help to, build those stories and make those connections. Like many places, we have a big hole in the basement where the water wheel was. So, developing a making activity on being able to iterate a design, to get something to generate the most voltage or spin the fastest, or however we're going to be able to collect data around these things. Some of those sort of are natural, but I think it's sort of identifying, kind of group everything into thinking about, we can talk about energy, we can talk about measuring and precision. That was an important part here. We can talk about repeatability, and we can talk about automation and sort of how do we connect all those things from, the 1840s to today? And again, it sort of goes back to a lot of those partnerships also, with tech schools in our area, with makers making change. Adaptive Technologies of New Hampshire reached out to us recently too about, we can 3D print pieces for folks in need too. And so there are all these different ways that we can have that empathy, have that purpose-driven making experiences taking place.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, no, that resonates here too. And I think it leads me to my next question, which you can answer as kind of purposefully as you would like. We're in an environment where institutions like the IMLS, the Institute for Museum and Library Services, has been cut, National Endowment for the Humanities, just recently National History Day. And also, I think for us specifically, last night we were celebrating Francis Cabot Lowell, but there's some hard history elements as well. For example, yes, it supercharged cotton manufacturing, but it also supercharged an enslavement economy that supplied the cotton. And we also have issues around climate change, like with the Waterworks Museum talking about, resources and things like that. I wonder how how empowered you feel to address kind of hard histories, Would it be useful for us? One of the ideas I had, maybe bring together folks from mills specifically as a starting point to talk about best practices and how we talk about kind of the enslavement economy around, cotton manufacturing. But there's opportunities for other kind of hard histories where we can find strength in our numbers and kind of share best practices, troubleshoot, and navigate this new interesting environment that we find ourselves in. Kristy, I don't know if you want to start us off, but feel free to either, speak to your own experience, but be comfortable with what you want to share with us. Would be great.
So I have been in this position for 10 years, or some variation of it for 10 years. And when I started here, my background is actually in art. So when I started here, I was essentially learning the history of the city and of the Industrial Revolution from very ground level. And one of the first things that happened when I started here is we were installing a wall of fame, which is 40 people in Manchester that you should know. The first thing I noticed was that there was nobody of African American descent on the board. And so when I said, where is that presence? They said, oh, Manchester doesn't have any African American history, not before 1960, and we don't go that far. And so I took that. And then the more that I started digging into the Industrial Revolution, that is simply not true. We have documents, we have logs that the wealth of the Amoskeag Manufacturing Company was directly tied to the slave economy. There are many instances where investors from the Boston Group and investors from the Amoskeag Manufacturing Company directly bailed out Southern plantations who were dealing with things like drought and fires and things like that. So it was very, very important to me that we start to tell that story. And even if at first it's just very anecdotally. And I think it's appropriate to say to a fourth grader, do you know in 1860 where cotton came from? And most of them knew that it grew south of here. And then, do you know who picked that? And then we'd start to get into those bigger conversations. And our museum talks a little bit about a very famous visit from Abraham Lincoln before he ran for president, and the role that the Amoskeag Manufacturing Company had in the Civil War and outfitting the Northern soldiers. And so over the years, we've really started to dive into those topics. And I think that with the climate we're in today, I think that kids are prepared for it. They're ready for it. They understand injustice. They understand the need for equality. And I think it is exciting for them to learn those topics and to talk about how we can learn from those poor examples that we were given. So my approach has always been to not sugarcoat it and to just sort of dive in and saying, we're still learning about it. People are still researching about it. So what I'm telling you is true, but it's not all inclusive. I don't know everything, and I am open to continuing to learn the narrative.
That I definitely would put a highlight on, which is, and I tell my tour guides this too, like, it's okay to say to visitors, like, we're not sure about that. Like, we're still looking at primary sources to find out more. Here's what we do know, but here's what we still would like to know and that we're working on. So even, for example, we have cotton plants because a lot of students don't even think about cotton as an agricultural product. And what does that mean in practice? And so, being thoughtful even about the sign and the label we put with the cotton, in the display case, it is an important discussion to be planful about. And I think, like I said, it is, an okay thing to say we're still learning this, and also to be grounded in primary source documents. Even if people don't feel comfortable with what you're saying to them, like, no, we have like the, Boston Manufacturing Company's receipts. Like, literally, we have the receipts, and they're coming from the South, and they're, picked by enslaved people. So I think that's an important element too. I wonder, Eleanor, if you have that, or if you want to talk about either climate change or any other kind of currently spicy topics that might come across your transom.
So I want to actually talk for a quick minute about the idea of like, we're still doing the research. And I think so. People, when they come through just for a regular tour at the museum, they are curious. They're like, who worked here? What do we know about who worked here? And so our one of our educators, Gianna, is actually has been doing research about digging like straight up the Massachusetts Historical Society, finding the employment records for our facility, finding the injury records for our facility, which people are always very excited to be like, oh, how did you hurt yourself? Like it's juicy. But one of the sort of stock answers that I give when people ask questions about that is I always precede it with, it's hard to find the history of working people. Like it's hard to find the history of working people. I have like every single thing that a legislator wrote about the building and the continuance of the site, but to find one thing that someone who actually worked there wrote is a struggle. And I think that highlighting that struggle and letting people know that it's a thing that we're working on, but that it's a thing that hasn't historically been prioritized, and there's a reason that it's hard to find it. I think that's an important part that you can just sort of slide into that conversation. And then, yes, I 1000% agree with you, Kristy, that kids are smarter than we think they are. Kids can handle a lot more complicated information than we think they can. And it is important to give them as much truth as you can for their understanding and grade level. And so we do talk about some sort of water access. We talk about climate change, and we do that in age-appropriate levels. If you come to the museum and you are a first or second grader, we're going to do our carry water challenge, where you try carrying a bucket on your hip, on your head, on a yoke and bucket, and then we're going to talk about water access and how you could improve those ways of gathering water. And we're going to be water engineers about it. And then we're going to break out our hippo roller, which is a technology that is in use in many places around the world for getting water from that last mile from the spigot to your house. If you come and you're a second or third grader, we might do our invisible water menu game, where we talk about the ways in which the food that we eat and the clothes that we wear take water in order to make them. And so you get to make a meal of like apples and spaghetti and a hamburger and a chocolate bar, and then you have to pay for it in gallons of water. And it starts to make you realize how much water goes into the creation of the things that we wear every day. If you come to our museum and you are in high school or college, you might play our Great Climate Race game, where you are designated as a different country and you experience both discoveries and challenges and policy issues and occasional disasters, and you're trying to get to a climate, like a carbon neutral future. And that also is a way of being like, okay, there's a reason why we can't just have an idea and then implement it. And that reason is people. And so if you're thinking about how are you going to impact our climate future, you can't just think about the technology piece. You have to think about the people piece and the politics piece and the persuasion piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And it probably translates not just for kids, but also for the grown-ups that come in as well, which, we mostly have been talking about kind of school groups and that kind of thing, but absolutely this applies to all visitors of all ages. Mike, I was just going to finish with our last question there to you, if you had any thoughts following on that.
I think in my time here, I haven't purposefully had focus on any of these issues in terms of program development. I think they can that whole sense of we should be motivated by finding the truth. And I totally, think kids understand that, and they know when you're not giving them the full truth on something too. As I go further into the history, if things do turn up, one of the elements of that question of, okay, well, how do we make history more relevant to today's youth? We do have one panel right when you walk into the exhibit area that sort of sets the stage of like, yeah, if you were a student with, in the 1840s, what were some of the elements of your life, in terms of, sets of clothes that you had, or, where things came from, and so, been thinking of, how do we build, those sort of like, 6 degrees of separation from, kids now to kids then type of thing. And so there, I certainly can see a lot of those issues taking place. But yeah, personally, it just that yeah, it has not been a purposeful focus of program development for me yet.
And actually, one before we open it up to questions, I'm just going to talk about, this is a great beginning because we have a lot we could discuss. I could go on for a lot longer, and hopefully this is the beginning of us coming together more regularly. I didn't even ask about how do you keep your machines fixed when many of the mostly men who worked with these machines back in the day are 80 plus and not as reliably available anymore. And so, keeping these old machines going for our visitors is a big deal. But I think I would love to pause there and see if our participants can take any questions from our audience. Feel free to either throw a question in the chat. I also put in the chat a book edited by Bob Forant of UMass Lowell called Where Are the Workers? And it specifically talks about putting workers in industrial museums and how we represent them. And I found it very, very insightful and useful. But if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just go and ask, Bob, go ahead.
Two questions. We, as industrial history museums, share a lot of thematic history, and the industries that we represent did together do many good things, but also caused a great deal of harm. So what I'm getting at is I think there are opportunities to collaborate, in other words, to develop programming jointly that can be shared. So things that are likely to be duplicative can be developed more efficiently because of the effort to share resources. But also, I think it can amplify important messages that we want to get out. If we're speaking at times with one voice instead of fragmented into the multiplicity of voices, it's like being in a stadium. When there's a crowd, it gets loud, and you can hear it from miles away. One person shouting the same miles away, you're not going to hear it at all, right? So shared programming, but also potentially traveling exhibit on a single subject and have it be something that moves from place to place fairly rapidly, so that the cresting wave recurs regularly. Okay, this month it's in Manchester. Next month it's going to be at the American Precision Museum, et cetera. And so does that resonate with you, interest you? Is that something that you would actively support, like energetically, or sounds like a good idea if I have time?
Well, there was a time when there was wonderful funding for things like that. One of the first 25 years ago, I was on, it sort of that same exact thing. It's like, yeah, any traveling exhibit was not designed for your 40,000 square foot museum. It was designed for your OMSIs and of the world. And so we had, between Montshire Museum and Science Center, Ithaca, some Rockville outside of Chicago, some smaller museums then that got together and to design exhibits around different topics, and then to rotate them through. And that was some of them are still, after 20 some years, are still touring now nationally. So I think that is a solution to a problem that we all experience. But yeah,
we could come up with a manageable standard for a traveling exhibit. Really think of it as a micro exhibit. A couple of wall panels, maybe a standing screen, and one case. We all agree on what a standard size would be, and then it's designed to fit that. So it's easy to set up, easy to pack up, easy to transport, and so let's not fall into the trap of creating too heavy a lift.
I think it also helps us kind of address thematic issues that we're addressing, whether it's like the mills or the factories or things like that. Eleanor, are you going to add something?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about like the lift on that, another sort of like that idea makes me think of this connected idea, which is collaborating on speakers. Like I would
Hmm.
love to like we're working on sort of putting a speaker series together where we have speakers who are coming on the regular, or we have speakers who are speaking specifically in connection to one of our rotating exhibits upstairs. And if that is something where it's like we can either sponsor a speaker across several organizations or have one speaker make several stops, that makes it more worth their while and gives us the opportunity to sort of like lure in interesting people. And I would love to do like even like just thinking about the people here on the panel and the ideas that you have, I'm sure that there are ways that we could tap into this community, the IHNE PAG, in terms of getting like as a source of speakers that could support multiple like I just feel like every one of you would have something interesting to say that people who have decided to come to our museum are going to be interested in hearing. And so that's another way to think about collaborating.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you put your finger on, and Kristy, where you're going to be hosting us in the fall, all of us at NEMA, but this idea of whether it's field trips or regular gatherings. I know some of our connections through the Society for Industrial Archaeology who face kind of a similar issue of kind of explaining their relevance and explaining a specific kind of history. Last year, I went for the first time to the Saugus Ironworks, which was amazing. And to have this like industrial history New England group together with folks who are both knowledgeable, but also just curious in a way that I think goes deeper than just a regular visitor was so helpful. And also to see other people's space, you get a much better context of what they're working with. And so, yeah, I wonder, Kristy, how are you feeling about having us all come up soon to
Oh my
your
God.
home base?
So you don't know this about me, but NEMA is like my favorite. Heather does know this. I love NEMA. I love NEMA. It is the highlight of my year every year. I cannot wait. I have 3 proposals for sessions and offsites that I'm hoping a couple of them will get picked up, because we are just very proud of this space. We are very proud of Manchester's industrious history and the story that we tell here. And I personally struggle as an educator to actually get paid for things. I would love to give everybody everything. If I have developed a program, I will send you the Canva files. I will send you my shopping list because I just am so passionate about getting this information out to people. And it would be really nice if we had a catalog of exhibits that we could borrow or programs that we could use. I've been making all kinds of notes, and I want to take a field trip with Eleanor, but about just topics we cover, because so many schools have different needs. You'll get a 4th grade teacher that says, hey, we're talking about the water cycle. What can you do? And I can do something because it touches my museum, but I don't necessarily always have the time to devote to a whole nother program. When I started here 10 years ago, there was 1 education program, and now we offer 12. But that menu keeps getting bigger and bigger, and the resources are getting smaller and smaller. So it would be really nice if I could call Eleanor or Mike up and say, hey, do you have anything pre-designed on water power? Or do you have anything pre-designed on child labor? And then we could help each other, because the reality is I'm not in competition with either one of you. Nobody that's booking a field trip. And we're so ingrained as Americans that we need to be competing and like keep our secrets, but we don't. If somebody loves the American Precision Museum, that's not taking anything away from me. In fact, it's going to add to, maybe if they're driving by, they'll be like, oh, I loved that museum in Vermont. Maybe there's something here for me. So the idea that we should all be developing things together, I think, is probably the most important thing we could get out of today. And being willing to let go of that, I did this, I own this, because none of us own the history. We might own the building, but this story needs to get out, because the more it gets out, the less likely it is to die with us or the people who maintain the machines.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
the
I
idea of
100% agree.
collaboration is really exciting to me.
That's a wonderful, I think that's such a great, as we're coming close to the end, I think that is the thing I would underscore the most, which is why we're so excited to come together in this way. We know we have so much to share. We also know we cannot do all of it. And we also know we don't need to do all of it. Like, I'm very open with Sheila Kirschbaum at, Lowell. Like, we are using your stuff. Like, it's really good. And why would I sit down and make an entire, thank God for the Songa Center. Like, why would I sit down and recreate an entire curriculum that they already have posted on their website? And I'll give credit, like, it has their logo on it and that kind of thing, and encourage people to explore. But we cannot do it all ourselves. And that's the biggest thing. And I'll also say, well, Heather is here too. Like, is it April 11th is the due date for NEMA proposals for the upcoming conference?
You just took the words out of my mouth.
Oh, all right.
I mean, yeah. So you guys have been talking about the November conference. I know Kristy's super excited. She was super excited down in Newport, which is great to see. But yes, our call for proposals are due this Friday. If you need some wiggle room, some people, just let us know. But yes, they are due on Friday.
And I will say, like,
super excited for Manchester.
One of the goals of us in this group, if anyone wants to collaborate on something, or maybe transfer this kind of panel to a panel discussion at NEMA, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help write something up and put us together. It's my name, as you see on the screen, Stephen.Guerriero at charlesrivermuseum.org. Before I send everybody into the rest of their day, can I just have our panelists? I'll go with Kristy and then Eleanor and then Mike. Plug your website or anything upcoming that you'd like to plug. I'll start by saying charlesrivermuseum.org is where you can find information. If you go to /events, that's what's coming up. If you go to /join, that's where you can get a membership. Kristy.
Yeah, manchesterhistoric.org. We have some really fun programming coming up. We have a Stories from the Home Front World War II dramatic reading coming up. We have a Fire Engine STEM Day coming up, and obviously NEMA conference, as well as we're partnering with Industrial New England the night before NEMA conference. So stay tuned for that. We'll have a really fun trolley tour of some industrial sites in Manchester. And I can't wait to meet everybody in person. And so thank you so much. This was a really good way to spend my lunch.
Excellent. Perfect. Eleanor, don't forget to unmute.
Sorry. Okay, so we're waterworksmuseum.org. Again, coming up in June, we have our Waterfest, but to this group, I would recommend our special access tours. Those are offered once a day in the afternoons on the weekend, and you get to go up on the machines.
It was really cool.
Totally, like everyone would love a special access tour, and that's what I would recommend. Okay.
Perfect. And Mike.
Yeah, we are AmericanPrecision.org. Gearing up, we have 2 weeks of April vacation program starting on Monday. Trying our hands at summer camps, which haven't been done here in quite some time. But the biggest thing is having a whole revamped school program offering, hopefully ready to go for next school year.
Excellent. And I need to make a ride up there. I am embarrassed to say I haven't visited yet. So
well, at least you can live a quarter mile from here and never visit. So
fair. And then I will also say, Eric, is currently the president of the Industrial History New England, which is industrialhistorynewengland.org. So that's kind of a consortium of all of us. Any last words, either Heather or Eric, before we send everybody into the rest of their day?
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to, another great Industrial Museum PAG meeting, more to come. And I really want to thank our panelists. Were fantastic. I knew there was going to be such enthusiasm here. That's what sustains us all really in what we do, regardless of what particular niche we're in. And Stephen, of course, I knew you'd be a fantastic leader in this group. And I think there's plenty of opportunity for more to come. I also would like to thank Heather and Jen and NEMA in general for being giving us this platform to talk. It's awesome to share this really inspirational sense, and it's an energizing feeling. So thank all of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is recorded, so you can tell your colleagues that they can watch it back later. Thanks,
link will
everyone.
be on
Thanks,
the-
Kristy. Thanks, Mike.
The link
Thanks,
will be on the
Eleanor.
calendar page, by the way. So for
Oh, that's
the
great.
YouTube page. So
Excellent.
you're going to go find it there. Yep.
Great.
All right. Thanks so
everybody.
much.
Thanks.
Have a great
Thanks.
rest of the week.
Bye.
Bye.